So wanted to take a second and like on some retrospective, right? Yesterday we covered the story that we saw there of this guy Kurt Lynn, who was out there at in Soto, and these guys were throwing all these racial slurs at him and everything, and nobody did anything. Then the police came and was like, yo, it's freedom of speech. They can, call you whatever they want to call you. They didn't threaten you, stuff like that. And, there's always this common sentiment this here in Seattle, once a lot of people, Seattle is such a liberal city and it's always such a open city, and Seattle always welcomes people and all this kind of stuff. But, unfortunately, I think that the city of Seattle, there's a myth that's out there, and people have gone along with this myth, and that Seattle has never been this liberal, inviting city for anybody of color. Ask the Duwamish, you know what I'm saying? Go back when, the riots against the Chinese, the internment of the Japanese. Man, so much stuff with black people here, you know what I'm saying? From guys trying to take the property by force at the turn of the last century, to redlining and everything else. And so when we see a story of like, oh man, some racist people called somebody a name and the police didn't do nothing, I mean, that's kind of been like the history here in Seattle. Now, I will say, that the mayor came with a PSA that we found online here a few weeks ago, in which she encouraged people. They said it was a rise in hate crime against Asian Americans and Asian people. But you see, every time when people can put a blame on somebody, that's the same thing during the internment. It was like, oh, well, man, you know what I'm saying? These Japanese, we need to put them all in jail, or basically intern them. And by the way, when they got out of internment, a lot of people stole their land and property and everything else. And we've seen this throughout the history of Seattle, is that, man, when things turn, people turn on people of color. But anyway, let's start here with the mayor's address. This was back on May 4th, where she's talking about the rise in hate crimes in Seattle and hoping that people can come together.
Seattle is experiencing possibly the most consequential event in our city's history. I've been proud of Seattle. I have seen so many acts of kindness and selflessness. Unfortunately, at stressful times, fear and anxiety can lead to acts of hate and xenophobia against communities, blaming them for the virus. We're better than this. Let me be clear. This is not a Chinese virus. It is a global pandemic. In Seattle, we have zero tolerance for violence or harassment against anyone, including our Asian and Asian American residents. If you have witnessed harassment or experienced harassment yourself, you can call the Seattle Office for Civil Rights at 206-233-7100. And of course, call 911 to report any hate crime. This is a time for us to come together and support one another. We are at the beginning of a marathon, not a sprint. There's no place in our community for hate or discrimination. The world is truly looking at us as a model, and it is up to us, Seattle, to act on our values of equity, kindness, and compassion. Thank you.
So right here is Mayor Durkin. She's talking about the city of Seattle. There's no tolerance and everything else. And and you see, she came with some force in there too, like we ain't tolerating this. And that very well could be her position that she feels 100% or she aspires towards. But what people need to understand is, like I said, Seattle, it would be fair for Seattle to say we aspire to be this city that's X, Y, and Z. But it's inaccurate and it's a straight up lie. And Seattle lies to Seattle when you sit there and we want to say that Seattle's always been this place that's been open and everything else. The difference is Seattle was able to get away with weaving this history, this revisionist history that's going on here, where, a city like Selma or a city like Montgomery, where I was at Montgomery, Alabama some months ago, they can't run away from their history. And they have to face it. And that's really where you start to actually heal with people in different groups. It's like, man, this actually happened. This occurred. This is a stain on the history of this city. But in Seattle, man, it's kind of been able to weave away from it. So the guy's name yesterday, I think it was Clint Lynn. So Clint, I know you were really surprised yesterday that somebody, yelled out racist comments to you there out down in Soto. But I went back here and we found something from 5 years ago from denshow.org. And they took an oral history of Japanese Americans pre-World War II in Seattle and talked about their experience. And then also they talk about their internment and everything else. Now, this is pre-World War II right here in Seattle. That this gentleman right here, Frank Yamasaki, describes being a small boy and trying to go to a swimming pool here in Seattle in the early 1940s.
I've had some horrendous experience or shocking experience. I would forget that, there are moments that you forget that we are racially different. There was one day, Tony and Vito and another fellow, it was hot, saying, hey, let's go swimming, and the pool is right up here, the Crystal Pool, and we looked at it, it cost a dime. So I said, hey, that's a great idea. So here we go. It's only a couple of blocks from the market, so we went there and they paid, and I was in line, and when it came to me, they said no. They did say, they just waved their hand and said, out. And it just caught me by surprise. And the others, they were shocked. They didn't know, they couldn't understand it. I understood right away what it was about. And they start arguing with them, with the clerk there, or the cashier. And at the same time, I was already halfway down the block.
So you see right here, he's explaining, this is denshow.org. Follow up there, and it's an organization. Well, I found this video right here was 5 years old. But, it's an oral history, like I said, of Japanese Americans here in the Seattle area. Pre-World War II, he was discriminated against, just wanted to go to the pool. They was like, no, you know what I'm saying? And by the way, this is the top layer of the onion, everybody. If I really sat here and really dug this onion apart, we'd all be crying on air. So I just got some top level stuff here. Here's this guy, just wanted to go to a pool, a young kid, you know what I'm saying, couldn't go to the pool. All kinds of stories and stuff like that. This is Seattle, this liberal city that's always been liberal and open armed. But the one that kind of hits home for us, and I just want to put some contrast, and this is just the top layer of the onion that we talk about, is the Conn Chicken Inn. So the Conn Chicken Inn, and we'll put this graphic up, Daryl. The Conn Chicken Inn was right here. It's on Old Bothell Road. Right now it's called Lake City Way in North Seattle. And yes, that is a Sambo right there. Opened in 1930 by this joker named Lester Graham, who was from Utah. And by the way, his thing said that Utah chicken, in Utah they make the best fried chicken. And look at that. That's the Seattle Times. Conn Chicken Inn, opened in Seattle. Oh, look at that. There's an ad right there. It says Conn Chicken Inn. So imagine the Seattle Times in 1930, where, you know what I'm saying, they advertorial. They wrote a whole big article about this great Conn Chicken Inn that's opening there, you know what I'm saying, in North Seattle, which is now Lake City, and even put an advertisement in the paper. So for all these people out there that was thinking, like, Seattle's always been such a liberal city, look at that. Man, play that one more time, Daryl. You know what I'm saying? The Conn Chicken Inn. And this establishment thrived for 19 years. Now, when it opened in 1930, the NAACP at the time was like, hold up, wait a minute, man. We're not with this. And so the NAACP went to court, brought, lawsuit, all kinds of action against these guys. The owner, what he did is he was like, yeah, I'll change the face, I'll change this and that. And what he changed is he made the skin pigment from brown to blue. To be able to move along with that. And if you always thought Seattle is such a liberal place, you know what I'm saying? We've always got each other's back. The labor movement got us. Guess what? What year was this that these guys went on strike there? This was 1937. The labor unions, there's actually some pictures. The labor unions went on strike at the Conn Cafe Inn. Not because of like, man, this is some racist whatever. They wanted better wages and better hours. And the union negotiated with the Conn Chicken Inn And the union at that time to ensure better wages and everything for white workers. Never mind that this was this racist restaurant that was there. But again, in liberal Seattle, that people claim has always been this liberal place. Ultimately, in 1949, the Conn Chicken Inn closed its doors, had a 19-year run. I think you might have seen in the video there in Seattle, Spokane. This guy's from Utah. You know what I'm saying? He was like, man, we're trying to put this Conn chicken everywhere. And so imagine now being here in the 1930s and you open the Seattle Times and here you see an advertisement for the Conn Chicken Inn. You know what I'm saying? You see a great article. This is the best restaurant ever with a Sambo on it. Wouldn't make you feel that it was such a warm, liberal city to live in, would it?
Oh, my word. I mean, that lineup, first of all, from Durkin to the Japanese to what happened with us. I mean, this city can say and claim that they have been progressive, innovative, a leader in social justice, in equity, all that they want to, till they're blue in the face. But you cannot run from the facts. So I'm just glad that we were able to share with our audience today some real facts about Seattle and pull out that ugly history, because you are absolutely right. If we do not face it like those cities in the South, if we don't allow that to be a stain right here in our city, then we are living a misnomer. It's a facade.
And I'll be honest with you. I look in the camera and say this. White people got to stop lying to each other about the history of Seattle. Because the only people who are lying to each other about the history of Seattle are white people. You know what I'm saying? I mean, it's very clear. You talk to, and big shout out to Esther Mumford, by the way, and Stephanie Johnson-Tolliver. When I read through historylink.org, you see that these black historians are cited in here. But the only people who lie to themselves about Seattle is white people. You know what I'm saying? Who's like, oh, Seattle is the best, this and that. Man, people who understand the history here and who have lived here have known, like, black people have been under attack here for 130 years, one way or another. You see what I'm saying? And so it's nothing new. And for Seattle to really be the city that we want it to be, then it's okay to say we aspire to be this city that's multicultural and liberal and everything else, but it's a misnomer and it's a straight up lie for anybody to say that this is what Seattle has always been. Today was just a layup. That was just an alley-oop. That's just the top of the onion. You know what I'm saying? I mean, I can keep peeling and people can really see, you know what I'm saying, the dirt and grit when it comes down to race relations and systemic racism in the city of Seattle.
Absolutely. I mean, and that's one of the things that we do, even on the land trust side, trying to understand how we got to a place where we have black leaders, even some that were, I mean, they looked like us and they were in positions of leadership, didn't mean that they were looking out for the betterment of us. And that is unfortunate. I love how we pull out, well, when we think about weed and seed, as one policy that led us to where we are today, and that being under Mayor Norm Rice, we have to rip that Band-Aid off, and look at the truth.
And exactly. So, I don't know. I kind of enjoyed it. It didn't take me too long. I kind of enjoyed going from like here, let's pull this, pull that. So we'll see what else we can kind of pull together around that theme. Because as we're building this new normal in Seattle, if you build back this same, you know, these same kind of systems and everything else, then, I mean, it's the same future that we're going to face here in Seattle. And so, Kirtland, it's too bad these people called you all these racist comments in Soto. It's even worse that people didn't do anything, and it's just outright horrible that the Seattle Police Department told you that that was their freedom of speech. But, you know, just wanted to be able to share with you some historical background here, you know what I'm saying, in the city and what it's all about.
Absolutely. So, that was amazing.